In this video, I'm going to show a powerful method that I use to generate cards for prototypes of my game, Scrapbots. I first learned about this technique from a post by Diegetic Games. I wanted to make this video to dive a bit deeper into how exactly this technique works. This way, you can create your own templates if the one provided doesn't meet your needs. First off, you're going to need accounts on two services for this to work: Google Docs and Figma. Both of these services are free to use and we'll be able to do everything we need without paying a dime. I'll assume you're familiar with Google Docs already, but you may not know much about Figma. Figma is a powerful but easy to use design tool, and I'll introduce a few of its features throughout the video. Let's jump in. First, let's create a new design file in Figma. I'll name mine Demo. I like to think of Figma design files as a project folder containing all the assets for a game I'm working on. In the left panel, click on Page 1. Pages are the individual pieces of content that make up your project. Layers are the individual shapes that make up a piece. This is the level you'll be working at the most. I'll rename my page to Card. First, let's draw a rectangle shape for our card. We'll use the pixel dimensions recommended for US standard poker size cards. That would be 825 by 1125. Let's type those values in for the width and height. Figma has lots of handy shortcuts for things. I'll use Zoom to Fit here by holding Shift and pressing the number 1. We can rename this shape to make things easier to find. I'll name it BG. Many card games have cards with names. Let's add a text field to our card. Choose a font you like. My game is about robots, so I'll use this techy looking one called ShareTech Mono. Let's make it bigger. And now I'm going to type #name. The actual content of the text field doesn't matter. I actually did this so that the layer name in the left panel is named correctly. This is important because we're going to use a plugin that looks at these layer names. I could make this something else, say name goes here, and rename the layer to #name. It would work the same way. The important thing is that the layer is named #name. More on this later. Now we're going to make this a component. Components are a feature of Figma that allow you to reuse things across your projects. In the context of generating cards, our component is going to act as a template. This template will be used to make all the cards we need and fill them with data from our sheet. To make a component, highlight the relevant layers, right-click, and choose Create Component. Let's rename it. I'll call mine Card Frame. Now we can copy this, change it, and keep everything in sync by only editing this base version. Let's create a grid of cards to demonstrate. Create a new page by clicking this plus sign in the left panel. Let's call it Card Grid. Now click over to the Assets tab. Click and drag the card frame component over onto the page we created. We've now created an instance of our component. Let's do this a few more times to fill up the page. You could even copy and paste these, and it would work the same way. There, now we have a filled page. To show the power of components, let's click back over to our card layout. Let's add a border around our cards so that they'll have some bleed and be easier to cut when printed. Select the background, add a stroke, make sure it's an inside stroke, and bump the value up to 10. Popping back over to our card grid, we can see how all the instances of our card component have been updated. This highlights how quickly and easily you'll be able to make edits to your game once we're done. Let's change gears for a sec and switch over to Google Docs. Let's load up Google Sheets and create a new spreadsheet. A handy shortcut for this is to enter sheets.new in your browser's address bar. Let's name this spreadsheet Card List. The top row is going to be field names. Our first field is name. Remember how I mentioned that the layer name being #name was important? This is why. That layer name is going to match up with any field names that we have in this spreadsheet. I'll only add name for now. Later in the video, I'll add a few more fields and even some icons. Let's add a couple of names. I'll keep it pretty simple for demo purposes. That's enough for us to get started. Now all we need to do is make this sheet public. Don't worry, by default it's read-only if you're worried about someone mucking up your data. Click the Share button, and then click Change to anyone with the link. Copy the link, and then head back over to Figma. Now we're going to install a Figma plugin called Google Sheet Sync. This little plugin is amazing and is going to be doing all the heavy lifting of generating cards for us. I would encourage you to throw the creator of this plugin a donation if you end up finding this method useful. Click the Figma icon in the top left, then down to Plugins. I already have it installed here, of course. You're going to want to click Browse Community Plugins, then search for Google Sheets Sync. Find it in the list and click Install. Once you've got it added, choose Google Sheets Sync. This will add the Google Sheets Sync plugin to this project and pop up a configuration pane. Hopefully you still have the link to your sheet in your clipboard. Go ahead and paste that in now. Now click Fetch and Sync and see our #name layers get populated with data from our spreadsheet. If you wanted to export this whole thing, say for a print and play page, head over to the right panel, click the plus next to the grayed out export section, and click Export. You might also need the individual card images to import into a board game prototyping tool or printing service. To do this, first highlight all the instances in the left panel, then in the right panel, find the grayed out export section again, click plus, and then export all layers. This will export a zip file containing each highlighted item as its own file. That's it for the basics and should be enough for you to get started. For the rest of the video, I'll show adding a few more fields to our card. Along the way, I'll show a few common things you might do in Figma. First, you might already have a card frame or background image you're using. Let's replace our background with an image. Back over to our card page, select the BG layer, and select the fill. We're going to change this from a solid color to an image. Click the Choose Image button, select your image. My image has a border, so I can remove the stroke we added earlier. I'll also resize the name text box so that it fits nicely on the frame. Now I'll add some more fields. This here in the corner is the cost. For things to work, the layer name needs to be hashtag field name. So let's make this hashtag cost. This is the health. Let's change the fill color. And rename the layer. Energy cost. Rename the layer. Attack value. Change the fill. And rename the layer. There, now we have some values to be populated. Let's head back over to our spreadsheet and add these fields now. Cost, recycle, health, energy, and attack. You can use formulas in the spreadsheet if you want. Maybe you have a balancing equation that you use. I'll use a simple formula to generate some random numbers. Equal sign, floor, rand, times the upper bound of 5 minus the lower bound of 1 plus the lower bound. This is going to update every time I make changes, but that's okay because I don't really care too much about these numbers. That should do it. Back over to Figma. Let's click on the card grid and click Resync Google Sheets data. And boom, there we have it. All our data has been populated. Maybe your game has factions and some cards need different icons than others. Let's show how we'll deal with that. Click over to our card page, draw a square, and rename its layer to hashtag icon. Over to our spreadsheet, add a new field, icon. Now we can just start pasting in links to images here. I'll use this Imager album to copy some links. Back to Figma, click the card grid, and resync. There, now each card has its own unique faction icon. Just to wrap things up, I'll add a piece of artwork here. Make sure we rename the layer, of course. Back to the sheet to add a field for artwork. And back over to our Imager album to copy an image link. Resync one more time. And there, now one of our cards even has artwork. By now, you've hopefully got a good understanding of how this method works and can get your own cards generated. Tell me about what you're working on in the comments.